you have your study guide, we are in lesson number 7 this morning. But just to give you an update again as to where we are at. Again, for my simple... Oh, sorry. Ghosts? I've heard of the Holy Ghost. Anyway, as I was starting to say, for my simple mind, I like this outline of the book of Revelation. I found it when I was in college, and it's always kind of stuck in my mind that this is a book about Jesus Christ. Again, the first 3 words are Apocalypsis Jesu Christu. And we translated into English the revelation of Jesus Christ. But it's a book about Jesus. So you have Christ in communication. We saw that where John is on the island of Patmos, and he has this vision on the Lord's Day, and he sees Jesus as he's never seen him before. Then we had vision number 1, which is Christ in the church, and the 7 letters to the 7 churches in Revelation. And again, thank you, Sutherland's, for this map. And again, here's Patmos out in the Aegean Sea. And then you have these 7 churches that made like a trade route in what is modern-day Turkey. By the way, take a look at this map too. Again, I get these bulletins now from Amir on a regular basis. I mean, it's boom, 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 boom. But one of them is he's very concerned about Sudan. They apparently have had a military coup in Khartoum. Now you might say, well, what's significant about that? He believes that the Ezekiel 38 nations are now totally falling into line because these coup leaders are connected to Iran. And so he thinks this is another step where the nations are coming together. So anyway, modern day Turkey, it was the province of Lud during the Persian era. So you have the 7 letters to the 7 churches. We've seen at that. Now we are on vision number 2, Christ in the cosmos. Remember in chapter 4, verse 1, John is told to come up here. And so what we are seeing now are events in heaven and also then events on earth. It's like there's 2 major scenes going on. So when you're reading Revelation, you always have to ask yourself, where is this taking place? Okay, heaven or earth? So initially we saw this tremendous worship around the throne. We saw the scroll that needed to be opened. We saw the Lamb who looked like he'd been slain as the only one worthy to open the seals on the scroll. So we've now seen the seals, and then we had kind of like a little bit of an interlude. We saw a different type of a seal, a mark on a forehead, not 666, but the mark that God gives those who are protected. We saw the 144,000, which again are 12,000 from the 12 tribes of Israel. Your study guide frustrates me because I know they're trying to write it for all these different churches and give all these different opinions, and some of them I just would like to go scratch right out, because I believe these are real people, okay, and real Jews, real tribes, and God has a Jewish evangelists who are going to go out during this time, because again, when we get into this period, Christ in the cosmos, even though Revelation doesn't delineate it as clearly as possible, you have to link Daniel, the book of Daniel, to the book of Revelation. And in the book of Daniel, you have this vision of the 70 weeks. 69 of those weeks have been fulfilled. And it's almost like God put a hold, stopped the time clock, and we're waiting for the 70th week. We're right here in the church age. Again, I believe in a literal pre-tribulation rapture. And I believe that it in some ways triggers this 7-year period of time that we call the tribulation, which can be divided into 2 halves, 3.5 each, the tribulation, the great tribulation, followed by the second coming. So again, please, when you're talking to people, many Christians today confuse the rapture and the second coming. They're 2 separate events, I believe, at 2 ends of the tribulation period, which leads into what I believe is a literal millennium, a literal 1,000-year reign of Christ that is not just only described in Revelation. Go back and read your Old Testament. Read the book of Isaiah. Either Isaiah should be totally spiritualized away, or God lied, or it's still yet to come. And I believe it's still yet to come. And you have a lot of these prophecies that will be fulfilled. Then later on we have the new eternity future, the new heaven, new earth. So, where we're at right now is we're talking about seals, trumpets, and bowls. Okay? These happen during the 7-year period of time called the tribulation. Again, your study guide very rightly pointed out that there's 3 main views as to how to explain these. One is chronological, that you have the seals, then you have the trumpets, and then you have the bowls. Some say, no, they're simultaneous. You have seals, trumpets, and bowls all going on at the same time. The other view is called telescopic, that the seals launch the trumpets, which launch the bowls, which is more chronological in order. So again, however you want to take it, what we're doing now by going through Revelation verse by verse, this is the way it was revealed, Apocalypse, to John. And so that's the only thing I'm willing to be dogmatic about, is to in what order they come, is this is the order that they were revealed to John. So we've seen the seals, okay? Now we're going to launch into the trumpets, and they're very dramatic. So, Debbie spoiled my whole introduction.
Sorry.
Because they did the Bible reading, like I did the Bible reading. And here we have the story of Joshua and the Battle of Jericho. And you have the people marching around the city for 6 days, and then on the 7th day, 7 times. And what are they doing as they're marching around the city?
Blowing the trumpets.
Blowing the trumpets, exactly. And man, it just hit me like, wow. Another reason I thought of this is that in watching these videos by One for Israel, one of the professors from the Bible college there says that there's nothing new. That there's all these events from the Old Testament that God in some ways replicates in the New Testament. They're like types. Okay? And so, I got thinking, well, you not only have the Joshua and Jericho, but you remember Gideon and the Midianites? When they broke the vases and they blew the trumpets and they shouted, very similar. And so now you have something quite similar here in Revelation as we get into these trumpets. So, I've been warned, I just did my reading in the Bible, which is quite silent, but I've been warned that our audio this morning is quite dramatic as we take a look at these 7 trumpets. So let's take a look, first of all, at chapter 8, verses 1 through 5, which is the 7th seal and golden censer.
When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. Then another angel, having a golden censer, came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints ascended before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and threw it to the earth. And there were noises, thunderings, lightning, and an earthquake. So this...
Wow, pretty dramatic.
No, that's not the worst of it.
I know, when the trumpets start sounding. Right. So, there are people today who say, well, how could there be a God? If there's a God, then why is he letting all this evil go on the earth? Why doesn't he do something about it? Well, the answer is that he's patient, not willing for any to perish, but to all to come to repentance. But one of these days, his patience is going to run out. And this is what you see here and taking place here in the book of Revelation. So if you take a look at your study guide, it talks about the marking of God's servants, which was the focus of last week's lesson, fell between the opening of the 6th and 7th seal judgments. Okay? Chapter 7 provided a long interlude, and now chapter 8, the action resumes as God is about to unleash on the wicked of the earth the great storm of his wrath. I don't know know if you've ever been in a dramatic thunder and lightning storm, but they can be pretty dramatic. Well, that's nothing compared to what is yet to come. So John noted that when the Lamb broke the seventh seal, there was what? Silence in heaven for about half an hour. Now, if you've already read Revelation with us so far, you see that heaven seems to be quite a noisy place. There's all these people who are singing, all these people who are chanting, all this stuff is going on, and suddenly it's all quiet. Now, for those of us who remember May 18th, 1980, in the Walla Walla Valley, one of the reasons why we knew something had happened, besides the fact that we actually heard Mount St. Helens erupt, Trudy and I had no kids yet. We were sitting at the breakfast table, and what was that? Is somebody dynamiting? You know? But later on, when the ash started to come our way, it got silent. I mean, you didn't hear dogs barking, you didn't hear birds singing, nothing. And the sky looked weird, and the sky smelled like 4th of July, you know? And so what I'm told is that one of the ways that some people can predict earthquakes right before they happen is that all of a sudden everything goes quiet. So it's interesting that just before this great judgment falls upon the earth, there's absolute silence in heaven for about a half an hour. And so there's different reasons. The most likely reason for the silence is it serves as a dramatic prelude to the unleashing of the trumpet judgments, because it's going to get real noisy really quick. So, all right. As John looked, he saw the 7 angels standing before God, and each one of the servants, he gave a what? Trumpet. Now again, there's different trumpets in Scripture. And if you turn to page 58 of your study guide, there is a little column there called the Trumpet Call. Can somebody read that for us, please?
I will. The word rendered trumpet in Revelation 8:2 may refer to a long, straight musical instrument made from bronze, iron, or silver. It had a conical or bell-shaped megaphone and a mouthpiece made from animal horn. This instrument produced a tone that was clear, sharp, and high-pitched. People in ancient times would use trumpets to announce the beginning of festivals, signal a call to battle, proclaim a victory, celebration, and inform people about important events.
Thank you. So again, it could be that as a metal trumpet. Generally, the interpretation that I've heard is that it's the shofar. And what is a shofar made out of?
Goat's horn.
Ram's horn. I actually have one. It's at home somewhere. It's very small, but Bob Raby brought it home from Israel and gave it to me. And I can make a sound with it. But we watched a video online of Israel's foremost shofarist. Is that a word? And anyway, he stands over the city like at sunrise, and he plays these would be almost like tunes. It's amazing, the sound. And he has a really large ram's horn shofar. But anyway, so there's debate as to which it actually is. But the fact is, they were given these trumpets. They are used to signal the launching of a series of calamities that were more intense than the seal judgments of chapter 6, but not as severe as the bowl judgments of chapter 16. So, to be honest with you, just to give you my opinion, and as Mark reminded us lately, if you want to disagree with me and be wrong, that's fine. But that's one of the reasons why I have a hard time believing that these are all simultaneous. Because if they are increasing in intensity, how could they increase in intensity all at the same time? I'm not sure. But again, that is one valid view. Okay. The apostle also saw another angel come and stand at the heavenly altar. He held an censer that was made from what? Gold. Okay, and your study guide points out that back in the days of the tabernacle and the temple, the priests used to use censers to carry hot coals to the altar. And then they were used, the coals, to burn the incense. And then the sweet smoke would come upward. We talked about that when we went through Exodus. We talked about the construction of the tabernacle. I remember we said that they took coals out of the altar where they were burning these sacrifices, took them in to the holy place. And this is where they had this incense burner there. And so apparently there's something like that in heaven. And again, the question is exactly what is involved here. Part of it has to do with the prayers of the saints. And I realize we need to take this in context. So this is the tribulation. And those who are left, the church is gone. That doesn't mean people will not be saved during the tribulation. That those who are left, apparently, were crying out in prayer. But even though that's the context, I do believe there's a principle that says that our prayers do reach heaven, and that they're like a sweet fragrance in God's sight, the prayers of the saints. So. All right, so let's go. You ready for some calamities now?
Is that where holy smoke came from?
Holy smoke! Oh my goodness.
Oh boy.
You have got me all incensed. All right, let's.
The angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. The first angel sounded, and hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth. And a third of the trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up. Then the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. And a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. Then the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch. And it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many men died from the water, because it was made bitter. Then the fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them were darkened. A third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. And I looked, and I heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice,
Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the remaining blasts of the trumpet of the 3 angels who are about to sound.
Well, that sounds like a shofar to me.
Yes.
And again, I'd encourage you to go online sometime or YouTube, and they have some of these shofars being played, and they're absolutely incredible, the sounds that they can actually get out of them. So anyway, but that's what it sounds like. That sounds like a shofar being blown. Okay, it's pretty dramatic. Okay, what's interesting, your study guide points out, again, what old is new, is, you remember Moses and Aaron, and they go back to Pharaoh, and they say, let my people go, and he says, who's the Lord that I should listen to him? And so what does God send upon Egypt? Plagues. And so many say that this sounds eerily similar to the plagues that came upon Egypt. They're coming. They're coming. Hopefully the rapture will happen before we finish. Okay.
That we want to hear.
Yes, yeah, and that's also interesting, is in Thessalonians, it says, at the sound of the trumpet, the dead in Christ shall rise first, and then we who are alive shall be gathered together with them in the Lord. So, remember Dick Brink, used to be our music leader. He said that his mother lived in Minneapolis, and she took a nap one afternoon, and as she was taking a nap, a car went by, and somebody blew their horn. I guess she sat straight up in bed, like, I'm ready. So, but anyway. But seriously, so yeah, it's interesting, but again, so a lot of this sounds very similar to what happened in Egypt. The plagues associated with the first 4 trumpet judgments affect the 4 major regions of the world: land, sea, fresh water, and sky. Okay? That pretty much covers what we have on planet Earth. These judgments are only partial, however, for they destroy just 1/3 of the people or of the land. God will use the first 4 bold judgments to further devastate the same regions. So again, if this is true, I have a hard time seeing how these could be happening simultaneously. To me, it's, again, for some reason, the Lord revealed this to us in a chronological style order. When the first angel blew his trumpet, he unleashed a torrent of hail and fire mixed with blood on the earth. And again, does that remind you of what happened in Egypt? Yeah, when the Nile turned to blood. John saw 1/3 of the globe, and its trees were consumed with flames, and the grass was burned up. The hail, fire, and blood correspond to the thunder, hail, and fire of the 7th Egyptian plague in Exodus 9, and to the 4th and 7th bowl judgments in Revelation 16. So some think the judgments should be taken at face value as describing what will actually occur on earth during the end times. Others, however, think John was using graphic language of a symbolic nature. Again, scratch that. I honestly believe this is what will literally happen. Again, I realize John does use figurative language, but I think that we should try to interpret Revelation as literally as possible. The other thing that Dr. David Reagan, Jeremiah, says that I think is interesting is he believes that Revelation is the most self-explanatory book in the Bible. So that if you're reading along and you don't understand something, just show it and just keep on reading. And he believes that eventually this will be explained in some fashion at least. When the second angel blew his trumpet, something like a huge fiery mountain went crashing into the sea. So is Earth hit by some sort of a meteor? I don't know. There's these warnings all the time now that meteors, now that NASA has all this equipment, they realize how many comets or meteors nearly miss us. And of course you realize that evolution-based scientists say that the dinosaurs became extinct because a meteor hit the Earth. But anyway, so people are already prepared for meteors coming. As a result, 1/3 of the water of the sea became blood, 1/3 of the sea creatures died, 1/3 of the ships were destroyed. Again, I don't think we realize how our economy is based on shipping. But a year or two ago, there was a problem at the Port of Los Angeles. And I used to go down there as a kid. The Port of Los Angeles, by the way, is actually a man-made port. There was a natural port, kind of, sort of, but they built this breakwater. And anyway, there was a problem with shipping. There was a problem with the union that unloads these ships. And you saw these pictures of not only the ships in the harbor, but all these ships out in the Pacific Ocean just waiting to get in. And they're carrying all these goods that we depend upon. We get a lot of things from China, like it or not, and the Orient. And so, anyway, can you imagine then if 1/3 of all the world's ships are taken out in an instant, what that would do to the world's economy? And again, this reminds us of the Egyptian plague where the Nile was turned to blood. Third angel blew his trumpet, and a large star, which was burning like a torch, fell from the sky on 1/3 of the rivers and 1/3 of the springs of water. And again, we depend upon rivers and streams, and we need to protect them. I sent Trudy the other day a satellite image of the home property and LLC property that was just logged the last couple of years. And when you see it from above, it's interesting because you know exactly where the streams are and creeks are, because they had to leave the trees on so many feet on either side of the stream. So you have this whole area that's been logged off now, and there's these green lines going through it. Okay, so streams and creeks are very important. Well, here these are going to be affected by this torch, and the word torch literally refers to a stick of wood that had rope or flax or hemp tied to it and dipped in oil and then ignited. And you've seen these old movies where people would rush the castle to kill Frankenstein or whatever, and they all have these torches burning. Well, something like this falls upon the earth, and the star has a name, and the name is what?
Wormwood.
Wormwood. And apparently it was the name of a plant notorious for its bitter taste. So
What does a Molotov cocktail? Does
what they do is they take a bottle and put gasoline in it,
Yeah.
and then they put a rag in it, and the
It's the
rag
same
soaks
thing,
up the
like
gasoline, then they light the end of the rag, and they throw it. And when it hits, the glass bottle breaks, and the gasoline goes everywhere and catches fire, and does a lot of damage. Yeah.
Or did it have to be similar?
Huh?
Thought maybe that might be a little bit similar.
Could be, because this torch falls to earth and causes this calamity. And so, you know, we've all seen what can happen locally with fires, like in Canada, where we're smoked in here.
Yeah, I was just thinking, with all this going on, we also had the rapture where there's gotta be a lot of chaos
Oh, yeah.
going on, you know, before. So
So-
they're probably going around wondering what is happening.
Well, I know that all of you already know that I'm insane, that I'm crazy. So I'm just gonna further that. It's just really interesting to me that since 1948, when Israel became a nation, suddenly there's this interest in UFOs. And there's movies about the invasion of the body snatchers and things. And what is interesting is in the last couple of years, this UFO phenomenon has not died out, it's actually increased. Now even our military is saying, well, yeah, well, we've seen things we can't explain. Well, I believe in UFOs. UFO means unidentified flying object. So yeah, all of us have seen things that we could not identify, and it was flying around. But anyway, what I think is, and this is just my pea brain at work, that it's almost as if Satan is priming the pump, so that when the rapture takes place, the Antichrist or whoever world leaders at the time can say, oh, we've been invaded from outer space, you know?
Christians
Yeah.
are snatched out to be
Back in
educated.
1970s, as kids sent up a UFO. It was
Yeah.
a garment bag with candles under it to make it like a hot air balloon. We sent it up in the middle of Des Moines, and there was some calls for UFOs. And as a result of it,
You evil.
yeah,
Boy.
yeah.
Well, we showed that video from the woods of Thailand. And remember, they do something similar.
Mhm.
Yeah, they light these things and they fly off and it carries their sins away. By the way, we have another video from the woods today. And it's outside in a field, so you might need to turn
Turn
the
the bass down,
subwoofer
yeah.
off during that. Yeah, they're having a smog alert in Thailand. I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but it's pretty bad for a month, every year. And I'll explain why. I don't wanna spoil it. All right, on page 60 of your study guide also, there is the plague of locusts, 4 different views. Could somebody read that for us, please?
Each,
Go ahead.
each approach to interpreting Revelation has a different way of understanding the plague of locusts discussed in 9:1 through 12. The already done or
Preterist.
preterist view thinks John's vision was historically fulfilled in the fall of the Roman Empire. The continuing to happen view
historicist.
has generally seen the locust plague as a depiction of the Islamic conquest of Western Europe. The yet to happen
Futurist.
view understands John's vision as a supernatural plague of demonic spirits that God unleashes on the earth shortly before the return of Christ. The spiritualized or
Allegorical.
view interprets the locust plague as depicting the self-defeating and tormenting nature of wickedness in the human soul.
So if you want to agree with the pastor and not be wrong, you'll say, oh, it is definitely futurist. I seriously do believe this is a literal event that will take place. And again, when you see the names described here, it seems to me like this is demons who are unleashed upon the earth to fully torment. Demons already torment, but not quite like they have. In a bit, we're going to talk about the Euphrates River. And did you know that the Euphrates River is drying up? And I watched a very interesting video. I'm not sure I agree with it, but they claim that some of these fallen angels have been imprisoned underneath the Euphrates River, and when it dries up, they can escape and torment the earth. Like I say, I've never heard that view before, but that's what some people are saying. So maybe it correlates to this. I don't know. I don't know. All right, the fourth angel blew, and 1/3 of the sun, moon, and stars were struck. 1/3 of celestial objects became dark. And again, this reminds us of the 9th Egyptian plague and the 5th bowl. And the 9th Egyptian plague was the plague of what? Darkness. In all of Egypt except in the land of Goshen. Yes, very interesting. So that's why you can say land of Goshen. All right. So again, I cannot begin to understand how bad this would be. Revelation 8:12 would mean that the light produced by the sun, moon, and stars will be reduced by 1/3. Possibly, another possibility is the 24-hour cycle of day and night would be shortened. I think that the light is going to be reduced by 1/3. I don't know where they get the other. Anyway, as John watched, he saw a lone eagle flying in the sky, shouting, "Woe, woe, woe." And that did not mean he was trying to stop his horse.
An eagle or an angel?
Well, it says eagle, and yet what we just read in Revelation says angel.
My
So
book says eagle,
your book says
but
eagle.
I noticed that thing said angel,
Yeah, so interesting, interesting, yeah,
and my Bible says eagle.
interesting. So it's
Does your
probably
Bible
just
say
an
eagle?
interpretation or a translation. Yeah. I thought the same thing. The term rendered woe is often used in Scripture to announce the coming of God's judgment on the wicked of the world. The 3 woes correspond with the final three trumpet calamities, and the 3rd woe consisting of the 7 bowl plagues described in chapter 16. The eagle or the angel flying across the sky may have represented an angelic creature, according to the study guide. So I don't know. Yeah, again, my version says angel, and again, translating from Koine Greek into modern English is not always easy. By the way, a guy by the name of John Sutherland sent me a short video yesterday where Dennis Prager, who's Jewish, is being quizzed, and he says that the King James translators got it wrong. In the 10 Commandments, it does not say, "Thou shalt not kill," because he says there's 2 Hebrew words for ending somebody's life. One is murder and one is kill. And he says it's clear that the word that is used there in Hebrew is murder. So really it should be translated, "Thou shalt not murder," because there's often times in the Old Testament where self-defense or killing somebody is appropriate. And so it's, "Thou shalt not murder." So again, translating into English is not always easy when you're translating from another language. All right, so hold on to your hats. We're gonna go to chapter 9, verses 1 through 12.
Then the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to the earth. To him was given the key to the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and smoke arose out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace. So the sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke of the pit. Then out of the smoke locusts came upon the earth, and to them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. They were commanded not to harm the plants of the earth, or any green thing or any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not given authority to kill them, but to torment them for 5 months. Their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it strikes a man. In those days, men will seek death and will not find it. They will desire to die, and death will flee from them. The shape of the locusts was like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were crowns of something like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men. They had hair like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. And they had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots with many horses running into battle. They had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. Their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, but in Greek he has the name of Apollyon. One woe is past. Behold, still 2 more woes are coming after these things.
So is that where you got the expression, woe is me? All right, so again, I don't want to be around during the tribulation. And again, I fully believe that this equates to the 70th week of Daniel. So this does not go on forever. There is a definite period of time. And by the way, what is interesting is that it is really 70 heptads. There's 70 sevens. And of course, 7 is a very important number in the Bible. And so I believe it correlates here. All right. So, when the fifth angel blew the trumpet, John saw a star that had fallen from the sky to earth. Now, again, I am a futurist. I believe this is a literal event, and I believe it involves Satan, and I believe it involves these fallen angels or demons. And so when you see this star that has fallen to earth, Satan is cast out of heaven, isn't he? Satan is cast to the earth. And in fact, that is one of the big things that happens. And so, anyway, don't know. Whereas the star in 8:10 is part of the phenomenon associated with the third trumpet judgment, the star in 9:1 seems to be an angel who serves as God's agent of destruction. Who knows? Someone, perhaps another angel, gave the star to the key of the shaft of the abyss. The term rendered abyss refers to a well-like bottomless pit that becomes the place of confinement for Satan, demons, and the Antichrist. You can see that in Luke 8, Revelation 11. When the angel opened the underground chasm, smoke poured out through from a huge furnace, and this smoke darkened the sunlight and air. So again, some of you remember just a few years ago when these fires were in Canada and the smoke came down here and we were like over 300 on the whatever scale. I mean, you could hardly even see down the block. Did you know that yesterday the Spokane International Airport was closed? Do you know why? Because a volcano erupted in Russia. And the ash went into the atmosphere and came over parts of northern Washington. Flights were delayed out of Seattle. Airport was closed in Spokane because this ash can damage aircraft engines. And it was at a certain altitude, and so they had to wait for this ash to pass over. Okay? Some people believe that if Yellowstone Park as a gigantic underground volcano, if it erupted, that we could have another ice age, that the sky would become so dark. Over much of the United States, currently the prevailing jet stream goes from west to east, so especially anything east of Montana going through Illinois and New York and that area could be just devastated because of almost like a winter-like condition. So,
And Yellowstone is bulging a certain number of inches per year,
yeah.
so it's like it's not very stable.
So the other thing that's a little bit scary, and I don't want to scare people, but I've read a couple articles now saying that they have discovered a 600-mile long crack in the Pacific Ocean right off the coast of Oregon. And it's releasing what they believe is something that lubricates the tectonic plates. And this theory is that if enough of this escapes, that these plates could shift and cause like a 9 on the Richter scale earthquake up and down the west coast of the United States, which could devastate places like Seattle and Portland or whatever. Sure wouldn't be good here either, but again, normally what happens, you not only have the earthquake, but then you have a tsunami that follows. And so, anyway, again, even Amir sent out a notice of that. And I think he probably did that because he's very interested in the events of the end times. And one of the things that Jesus talks about is earthquakes. And so, anyway. All right. Locusts had the ability to sting like scorpions. By the way, they're not allowed to kill, but they're allowed to torment. And their stings are like scorpion stings, which apparently are extremely painful. People are going to want to die, but they can't even die during this period of time. You don't see them repenting and submitting, but you see them wanting to die. So John said the locusts looked like horses and armed for battle. They had gold crowns on their heads. They had human-like features, these breastplates, all this stuff. One is left with the impression, according to your study guide, that these creatures were invincible, intelligent, fearsome, and ruthless. And again, I don't see that describing the fall of the Roman Empire or the rise of Islam. To me, this is a future event with horrible, horrible creatures that are able to do things here on earth. And one of the reasons why I believe that this is demonic is that their king has two names, a Hebrew name and a Greek name. And what is his Hebrew name?
He is Abaddon.
Abaddon. And what is his Greek name?
Apollyon.
And what does that name mean? Destroyer.
Satan.
Yeah, so I seriously think that this is a description of Satan being able to be loosed here on earth. These are fitting titles for this tormenting, ruinous creature who is associated with the first of the three woes. All right, we got to move quickly and take a look at the sixth judgment. Hang on to your hats. Here comes verses 13 through 21.
Then the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the sixth angel who had the trumpet,
Release the four angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates.
So the four angels who had been prepared for the hour and day and month and year were released to kill a third of mankind. Now the number of the army of the horsemen was 200 million. I heard the number of them. And thus I saw the horses in the vision. Those who sat on them had breastplates of fiery red, hyacinth blue, and sulfur yellow. And the heads of the horses were like the heads of lions. And out of their mouths came fire, smoke, and brimstone. By these three plagues, a third of mankind was killed. By the fire, and the smoke, and the brimstone which came out of their mouths. For their power is in their mouth and in their tails. For their tails are like serpents, having heads, and with them they do harm. But the rest of mankind, who were not killed by these plagues, did not repent of the works of their hands, that they should not worship demons and idols of gold, silver, brass, stone, and wood, which can neither see nor hear nor walk. And they did not repent of their murders, or their sorceries, or their sexual immorality, or their thefts.
Wow. So, again, two modern things. One is, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, that there are those who are saying, hey, look, the Euphrates River is drying up. And that would enable two events. If, literally, these angels are being imprisoned underneath the Euphrates River, and it says here that they will be let loose, that could happen. The other thing is that this 200 million man army, many have said there is only one nation on planet Earth that could field an army of that size, and it is the nation of China, okay? And if you've read the news lately, China is ramping up its military in every way, shape, or form, and it's becoming a world threat. They are also right now trying to dominate the Middle East. If you read Amir and his messages that come out, he's very concerned that now these nations in the Middle East, they're looking to China in order to broker peace or to do whatever, not the United States, because the United States is looked at as being weak. So, if a 200 million man army is marching out of the east to go into the west, the Palestine area, there was a problem, and that was a natural Euphrates River. But if it dries up, they can march right across it. And so, anyway, there are those who say, we need to be watching some of these things. Now, a third...
I don't mean to stop you instant in the middle of your sentence, but anyway, according to statistics, China's population is on the decrease, and if this thing doesn't happen pretty soon, they won't be able to put that many people on the ground.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read an article recently that the Chinese government is going to revise their policies to say one child, and so men are preferred, so they've been aborting girls, so they have all these men, but men cannot reproduce, right? So they realize they now have a population problem, believe it or not, yeah. All right, so already 1/3 of the world's population has been annihilated. Now another 1/3. 1/3 plus 1/3 equals 2/3, which means there's only a third left. Now, I don't know exactly where we're at, but just several years ago, they used to say there were 6 billion people on planet Earth. I know it's a little bit larger now, but again, if the rapture takes place, how many people will then be left? But let's just use a number as 6. That means that 4 billion people have been annihilated during this period of time. I mean, this is an unbelievable catastrophe that is happening on planet Earth. There will be those who survive and go into the millennium. So anyway, they were killed by this fire, smoke, and brimstone, and it has this description of what these are like. And again, they're awful creatures. What I think is extremely interesting, and we're almost out of time, is verses 20 and 21, which I will reread to you without the sound effects. The rest of mankind who were not killed by the plagues did not repent of the works of their hands. They did not cease to worship demons and idols of gold, silver, brass, stone, and wood, which cannot see, nor hear, nor walk. Nor did they repent of their murders, or their magical arts, or their sexual immorality, or their thefts. I don't know if you've read the news lately, but things are getting worse and worse around planet Earth. It's like society is going downhill. You have this whole woke culture. Now you have all these murders. There was a shooting at a birthday party in Alabama last night, and 4 are dead and 20 are injured or something like that. Yeah, these are teenagers, yeah. And the interesting thing is, again, I don't want to get into politics, but guns don't kill people, people kill people. We've always had guns. So what is going on with our society? The teenagers are killing one another. and a birthday party. And you see all these other things that are going on Earth. So it just not totally surprising to me that you see this description of people who are in the midst of this and they're still not willing to repent. For sure. All right, we're out of time. We need to get